So, my name is Bruno Bianchi Sarcone. I run Spainguru.es, and this is the free Spanish non-lucrative visa webinar. Today is Monday, August 25th, 2025. And the way I have structured the webinar is a timeline before the application, during the application, and after the approval. We're going to look at the definitions, how consulates and BLS offices work, the residence or immigration status for tourist residents in Spain, some tax considerations before moving to Spain, and then we're going to go through the eligibility, documentations, and requirements for the non-lucrative visa. Then we're going to have a look at the timing of the process, application process, and then arrival into Spain, the different ways to arrive, and the recommended tips for your arrival in Spain and entry in Spain with the non-lucrative visa. Renewal, long-term residence, citizenship, if you want to become Spaniard, and some of the most common pathways to transition to work permit. Small disclaimer here, the content of this webinar is for information purposes only and is not legal advice. The requirements listed here are not official. Please check your specific consulates and BLS office requirements. And if you have to leave early today, but you think that the information that I share with you is valuable and you want to, also help others find it, you can leave a review on Trustpilot. There's a green bar there on the top with a red button that redirects you to Trustpilot where you can leave a nice review, and it will really, really, really make my day. A little bit about Spanguru and how you can use Spanguru.es portal. The objective is facilitating the relocation process for English-speaking foreigners to Spain since 2014. And we have some wonderful reviews out there on Trustpilot and on Google. As you can see, you're in good hands. And Spainguru.es is absolutely free. You can use every resource on Spainguru for absolutely free. You can join our weekly newsletter that I send every Monday. I have just sent one 2 hours ago, where I feature the top discussions on the Spanguru community, most watched video last week, and investigation blog posts. You can also watch our YouTube channel with nearly 1,000 videos, with half of them about the non-lucrative visa. Read our blog post articles, almost 2,000 articles, and of course, join the community. One of the most important groups out there is Spanish non-lucrative visa, with 23,000 members that I highly recommend you joining today. There's the link and there's the QR code where you can find the discussion from our members and also tips. And also other free resources on Spainguru.es, other webinars. There's a total of 6 webinars. All of them are free. Taxes, moving to Spain, Spanish digital nomad visa, etc., etc. And as I said, the newsletter and a recently released information called Move to Spain Checklist, where I have put in one single place every single thing you need to do in order to move to Spain, step by step, starting 1 year before your intended move to Spain, with all the resources, articles, vetted partners, and services you can use in every one of your steps. So everything is in one place. So hopefully that will take your stress out and make it smoother, right? And also, I recently released last week the destination sections where I feature 13 places in Spain from an expat's perspective, right? Someone who is moving to those places. I feature the cost of life, climate, transportation, amenities, etc., right? 13 places where I believe 90% of foreigners move in Spain. So it is pretty much covered. I plan to add more, but yes, highly recommend you looking at that. All this is absolutely free. But if you want to engage with professionals, I also have personally vetted immigration experts who can help you with the visa application or in general to establish a long-term strategy for your stay in Spain, that I highly recommend you to engage at least 1 hour just to make sure that your vision for your move to Spain is correct. And also tax advisors, the other part. So immigration and taxes, I think definitely you should engage with professionals and financial planners as well. And if you plan to apply for the visa on a do-it-yourself basis, you want to do it yourself, you can find non-lucrative visa compliant health insurance, medical certificates in the in the UK, and Spanish doctor as well, sworn translations accepted by any consulate in the world, apostille services in the US and the UK, bank accounts, money transfer services, property rentals, mortgages if you plan to purchase property in Spain, and more than 100 services, all personally vetted by me. So yeah, that's all you can find on Spanguru.es, and I hope it's helpful. Now let's go to the non-lucrative visa. What is the Spanish non-lucrative visa? It's a Spanish visa for non-EU citizens who can financially support themselves and who don't need to work in Spain. I underline Spain. We're going to talk about the gray area, about working for non-Spanish companies on a remote basis. How it's defined, this visa and residency, basically by two regulations. The most important one in hierarchy is the Ley Orgánica, is the top most important law. And it's very important that you understand that there are two hierarchies here, okay? One is more important, the law, the Ley Orgánica, and the regulation of the law that goes into detail how the main law must be applied, okay, for the specific cases, is the regulation or Reglamento de Extranjería. And it's very, very important that you understand the difference between the two, because recently the Reglamento de Extranjería, the lower one, has been passed, okay, and took effect, the new one, last May 20th, 2025, with certain changes, okay? But there are some gray areas again, and I'm going to go deep into that, okay? So it's important that you understand the difference between the law and the regulation of the law. Now, let's talk about the consulates, specifically in the US, UK, Canada, and Australia, because you can only apply for the non-lucrative visa at a Spanish consulate. You cannot do it from Spain, okay? Unless you already hold a residency type in Spain that is not non-lucrative residence, and you want to modify that residence into the non-lucrative residence. In that case, you can do it from Spain. But if you're applying for the first time, you have to do it from outside Spain. And in which consulate? It cannot be any consulate. There's two options. Either you are a legal resident within the jurisdiction of a particular consulate, and that is your consulate, or you're a dual passport holder. Let's say, for example, you are American Colombian, okay, and you live in Los Angeles, right? But you travel to Colombia and you apply at a Spanish consulate in Colombia because you hold the Colombian passport as well. That could also be an option, right? In any case, on Spainguru.es, you can find dedicated pages for each of the consulates on those four countries, Spainguru.es/Spain non-lucrative visa. And why is this interesting? Of course, this is not official pages, but the interesting part is that, for example, if you search on Spainguru.es, the Los Angeles consulate dedicated page that I have created, not only you can find all the official links, okay, to the NLV requirements in English, in Spanish, and BLS, but also you will find first-hand experiences from Spanguru community members who have shared their experiences of applying for the non-lucrative visa in that specific consulate. And why is that so interesting? Because every consulate is different. And you will find like hidden requirements that are not published anywhere that our Spanguru community members gently share with the community and, warn others so that they are not missing anything, right? So it's important that you read those first-hand experiences, in my opinion, right? Now, something important too. Some consulates, many of them, they use an outsourcing service, a third party, a private company from India called BLS International to process certain visas. Sometimes the consulates only process one type of visa using BLS, and they process themselves other visas, okay? For example, there are different visas, digital nomad visa, Schengen visa, non-lucrative visa, etc. Maybe they use BLS only for the Schengen visa, okay? So it's important to understand whether your consulate is using BLS International to process the non-lucrative visa. In the UK, every consulate uses BLS International for this, okay? But for example, as far as I understand, in Australia, no consulate uses BLS International. In the USA, most consulates use BLS International for the non-lucrative visa, right? But for example, New York City doesn't, right? So when we talk about your consulate, you may have to actually deal with BLS International. So it's important that you understand whether your consulate processes the NLV using BLS or not. BLS International is an Indian company that is present in the Indian Stock Exchange. You can invest in that company if you want. It's a huge company, operates in 66 countries, and does visa processing for many countries, Spain being one of them. Another consideration, the Schengen area. What is the Schengen area? It's a group of 29 European countries that can be part of the European Union or not, okay? But in this group of countries, it is internally borderless. So the outside border has passport control, but once you are inside, in the most common case scenario, you're not going to have internal immigration controls. So it's also something to have in mind, right? Because if you enter Spain from another Schengen country, you're not going to have a passport control. We're going to talk about that. Now, let's talk about the visa requirements for Spain. You can enter Spain as a tourist or with a visa, right? So British, US, Canadian, Australian people, citizens, can enter Spain and the Schengen space without a specific Schengen visa, just with their passport. But they can only stay a maximum of 90 days in a 6-month rolling period, right? But some nationalities will need a Schengen visa to enter the Schengen space. For example, Philippines needs one, okay? So what happens if you want to stay longer than 90 days in any of those European countries? But now we're going to talk, of course, about Spain. You have to obtain a visa that enables you to obtain a residency in that country. The non-lucrative visa enables you to obtain a non-lucrative residency. The visa is the paper that goes stick in your passport. But once you enter Spain, you have to officially obtain the residency for the non-lucrative residency via the TIE card, which is the plastic card with your face. You go to the police station, you put your fingerprints, etc. And now you are a non-lucrative resident, right? And then your paper on the passport is no longer valid, let's say. It's no longer important, right? Now, the non-lucrative residency, it is a temporary residency. Why? Because generally you will obtain it for 1 year, you can renew it for 2 more years, and you can renew it for 2 more years, total 5 years. And any residency permit in Spain that is less than 5 years is considered to be temporary. After that, you can obtain the long-term residency, also known as permanent residency, right? But in Spain, it's officially called the long-term residency. Yes, which is much better permit. Because it has work permit, because the conditions to obtain it are much better. We're going to go through that, right? So if you plan to stay longer than 5 years in Spain, better to fulfill the requirements to obtain the long-term residency permits. Now, if you are a European Union passport holder or you are married to one, the non-lucrative residency is not the way to go to stay in Spain longer than 90 days. It is much easier, and the requirements are much softer if you or your spouse hold a European passport, right? If you plan to retire in Spain, for example, to stay in Spain more than 90 days as a European passport holder or married to one passport holder, European passport holder, you have to demonstrate less money, okay, less funding. It's around 7,200 euros with some variations by region. And it will have work permit included, and you won't have to renew within 5 years. So that's very, very cool. So if you are in this case, or you have the possibility to obtain a EU passport holder, consider obtaining that EU passport before, okay? Because the conditions to stay in Spain are going to be much easier and better than with the non-lucrative visa. Now, let's go to taxes. Some considerations about tax. And the most important concept is tax residency in Spain. When do you become a tax resident in Spain, and what happens when you become one? You become a tax resident in Spain, you must pay taxes on your global income. And potentially, some taxes are calculated on the net value of your assets as well, in Spain and abroad, okay? And you become a tax resident in Spain if any of these 3 conditions apply. The first one, if you spend over 183 days in Spain within a tax year. Tax year is a calendar year that runs from January 1st to December 31st. Different from an immigration year. If you enter Spain in June, your year will be from June to June. Okay, so they may overlap with the tax year or they may not. Okay, if you enter on January 1st, then they will overlap perfectly, right? Now, if you those 183 days is just physical presence. It doesn't matter if you're a tourist, if you are with a non-lucrative visa, it doesn't matter. Just you physically in Spain counts, okay? And 1 minute of your physical presence in Spain counts as 1 day for Spain tax authorities. Also, the days don't need to be consecutive. So, for example, 10 days as a tourist at the beginning of the year, and then under a visa every day will count. Okay, so do your calculations. Second condition, your main economic activity or primary income source is from Spain, regardless of time spent in the country, or if your family lives in Spain. Okay, those three conditions. And a little about taxes, just one slide. Income tax, that is due, the annual income tax, June 30th. For example, in June 30th, 2026, you will pay taxes on all your global income in 2025, right? And progressive brackets that go from 19% to 47% will apply. And $1 million question for round numbers, because you have there the brackets on the table on the right. If you see the fifth bracket goes from 60K to 300K, and it's 45%. Does it mean that if I make 100K, I'm going to have to be paying 45% effective tax rate? The answer is no. You're going to pay an effective tax rate of around 36%. This is ballpark figures, okay? Just to take the fear out of you. Because the way that the progressive tax bracket work is that for the first 12,450, you're going to pay 19%. For the next 7,500 euros that you make, you're going to pay 24% income tax, and so on and so on. Therefore, you're going to pay, let's say, an average, okay, of those tax brackets. Then there is the Form 720 that you have to disclose your assets held abroad in different categories. If each category is 50,000 euros or more, for example, bank accounts, real estate, etc., and that's due on March 31st. You need to tell the tax authorities what you have abroad outside of Spain. And then there are some taxes that are calculated on your wealth or the net value of your assets. There is a regional wealth tax that depends on the region. For example, Madrid and Andalusia, let's say that they don't have it. They do have it, but they make things so that you don't have to pay it. And then Catalonia, for example, is the worst, okay, one of the worst, that because it kicks in at only 500,000 euros, okay, of wealth calculation from your assets, right? There are allowances and deductions, etc. Okay, this is all for general information so that you know a little bit about it. Okay, and then there is a solidarity tax, which is a wealth tax, but on a nation scale. So it doesn't matter where you live, you're gonna have to pay it, but the threshold is 3 million euros. Okay, much higher threshold, right? So yeah. It's important to understand that Spain has many double taxation agreements with the USA, UK, Canada, Australia, and many countries in order to avoid being taxed twice on the same category. It doesn't mean that you're going to pay less taxes, but at least you won't be charged twice by the same category. Okay, so it's important to engage with a tax expert for all this, and before taking the decision to move to Spain, yes, look at the possible consequences of doing so. If you want to know more, I have a tax webinar. It is also free that you can join and watch the recordings anytime, and we go deeper about all this. Now, let's go to the non-lucrative visa documentation. This is a summary list, and we're going to go one by one deeper into each one of them. First, they will ask you where you're going to live in Spain, your address in Spain. Depending on the consulate, they can be very strict about this, or they're going to be very flexible. Flexible ones, they will ask you only the province where you're going to live. Oh, I want to live in Seville province or in Valencia province. You just write that. Some consulates are famous because they want you to show a rental contract in advance. Okay, so there's a lot of discussions what is eligible for that strict interpretation, which is a ridiculous interpretation. I can say it loud. And I say loud because I have interviewed Ainhoa Manero from Stern Abogados, and I have a video on YouTube, on Spainguru's YouTube channel, where she says that her customers never have to submit a rental contract, okay? Because she says that, this is absolutely, let's say, against the spirit of the regulation, and it makes no sense. But most of the people, especially the ones who apply for themselves without legal help, They will rent, for example, an Airbnb for 3 months, get certificate for visa application from Airbnb. Some consulates, they want 6 months. Okay, but you have to be very careful about this, because once you arrive to Spain, there is a very high chance that you need an empadronamiento, okay, which is a registration in the city hall to show proof of address when the time comes for you to get your tarjeta de identidad extranjero or residency card. The police will ask you to submit an empadronamiento, and not every rental contract, especially short-term rental contracts, will be valid to obtain the empadronamiento. So this is a specific thing and to have in mind, right? So bad consulates, let's say, or strict consulates, I believe Boston, DC, Chicago, Houston, if I'm not wrong. Okay. And this is not just the ones that come to my head. There are more, okay, maybe. Then addressing the country of residence. As I said, you need to prove that you're a legal resident where you're applying from, okay? So if you are, and I see people connecting from Atlanta, Georgia, you need to show, for example, your driving license so that you can apply at Miami BLS, because you are within the jurisdiction of the Consulate of Miami, right? Then prove sufficient financial means to support yourself. If you're bringing dependents, wife, husband, children, you need to also prove that you are supporting them. Have comprehensive health insurance from a company authorized to operate in Spain, or there is an exception, especially for UK retirees. They can use the S1 form instead of private health insurance, because that S1 form will enable them to join and have access to the public healthcare system, okay? However, it is recommended to have a private health insurance, because there's many weeks and months even before having effective access. But as a requirement for the non-lucrative visa, they can use the S1 form instead. Otherwise, you will have to get a private health insurance. Clean criminal background check, medical certificate. And if you're, as I said, moving with spouses, you need to show a new copy of the original, new marriage certificate. And if you're moving with dependent children, new birth certificates. Many of these documents, apostilled and sworn translated. You will have to prove in many cases that you're not going to engage in any work or professional activities. So unless you are showing pensions, okay, normally you will face more scrutiny, especially if you're like a younger person. And there is a risk that you want to join the labor force again. They will ask you to make sure to swear that you're not going to do it. A letter of intent, okay? Some letter of intents are, let's say, oh, I want to enjoy Spain, its culture, paellas, etc. And some letters of intent will be more technical, where you can take the opportunity to explain your finances, your plans, etc. Especially if you don't have like a straightforward case and it's a bit complex, to help the officer understand that you are the a right NLV applicant. And then in most consulates, especially the ones working with BLS, you will have to bring a photo, okay, of certain dimensions. You have to pay fees. Everyone has to pay fees, all the applicants, dependents too, etc., etc. Okay. If you want to know the answer from a legal expert, I know Manero has answered 55 frequently asked questions in 2 videos of 20 minutes each. So less than 1 hour, 55 answers to the top frequently asked questions about the non-lucrative visa on Spanguru's YouTube channel. Now, let's go through and deeper into the financial requirements in 2025, okay? As you know, you need to prove that you will have sufficient funds to maintain yourself, okay, during the first year of your residency, right? And it's important to understand this, because when you renew the non-lucrative residency, it's going to be for 2 years. So you will have to prove that you will have at renewal the enough funds to sustain yourself during a 2-year period. That's why the renewal, people say that you need to show twice the amount, right? Now, how much money you need to show? Yes, you need to show 400% for the main applicant, 400% of the IPREM index in 2025, right? And each dependent is going to be 100% of the IPREM index. The IPREM index, I'm going to move here, it's an index that is published in the national budget at the beginning of the year. The national budget it is only renewed if there is political agreement. There hasn't been political agreement in the last 3 years, so it stayed frozen. But if there is political agreement, normally they take that opportunity to update the IPREM. As you can see in 2023, 24, and 25 is 600 euros per month. That is per year 7,200 euros. So 100% of the IPREM is 7,200 euros, 600 times 12, right? So each dependent needs to show 100% of the IPREM, 7,200 euros. And each main applicant has to show 400%. So 4 times 7,200, which is 28,800 euros. Therefore, if you're applying as a couple, the main applicant is 28.8K plus 7.2K, total 36,000 euros. This is the minimum financial threshold for a couple, for example, right? Now, what type of funding you can show? So it can be passive income, recurrent passive income, and or savings, or a combination of both, right? So savings and or passive income could be pension withdrawals, rental income, dividends, funds available by credit card too. Okay, it is by law, okay, that you can have access to credit card credit, okay, as long as it is readily available without penalties, and you get a certificate from the institution that you have this money in your power, in your possibility, you can use it as well. Rental income is being a bit more controversial because many consulates and regions, when you renew, consider that this type of income is not very safe because your tenants can stop paying, right? So use it with caution, not as the main type of funding, okay? Although there's people who report, yes, I have used 100% rental income to renew or to apply for a non-lucrative visa. Some consulates are starting to be a bit worried about this. How do you prove that you have that money? Via bank statements, usually, okay? And depending on the consulate, you will have to submit 3 months, 6 months, 12 months bank statements, and certain documentation from your bank, okay? Wherever the bank is, right? Normally, you will have it in the US if you're applying in the US, UK, etc., but it doesn't have to. Many consulates will also ask for tax returns. Sometimes it's an official requirement. Sometimes, depending on the situation, for example, if you're bringing dependents, they want to see that they really depend on you via tax returns too, etc. And as I said, since the renewals are for 2 years instead of 1, you're going to have to show that you have double the amount during those 2 years, right? So if you're applying for the renewal with savings only, with hard, cold cash in your bank, you have to have double the quantity, okay? But if you have recurrent income, passive income, then you don't have to have double the quantity because you will have double the time to receive that passive income. We're going to go through that later on. Many people ask about the financial requirements for the renewal. You have to plan ahead because only after 1 year, you're going to have to renew that non-lucrative residency, right? And there are strong regional variations. For example, you say in Valencia, you only need, this is a lawyer who says, in Valencia, you only need 1 year funds for years 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, whereas Alicante, same community, but different provinces, you need 2 years funds, double, okay? Credit card is accepted, okay? Now, someone in Almeria said you only need to show 1 year for 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 renewals, right? And some people also say that if you take a loan using your house as collateral or using your credit, this can also work, right? So these are some ideas, okay? We mentioned about the IPREM. So be careful with the IPREM because it can change, okay? If next year there is political agreement, what happens if they increase it to 650 euros per month? That means that the main applicant will have to have nearly 3,000 euros more minimum threshold, right? This is always increasing, as you can see in the progression. So count on that because maybe you apply with a certain amount, and then for the renewal, after 1 year, there is a new IPREM, and the IPREM will update the thresholds. Okay, so something to budget. There's also new documentation in terms of bank certificates after, especially after May 20th. This is a Screenshot from London Consulate, because Manchester Consulate has still not updated their website, but they're asking for these certificates. They want full bank name and address. They want to see that everything matches, that your name appears in the bank account, that you are the owner of the bank account, the number of the bank account. When you show bank statements, the number of the bank account has to be the same in the bank statement. So everything should match, right? Full account identification, when you open the account, and controversial ones. Balance as of December 31st, okay? So how much money you had on December 31st, midnight, in that bank account. And also the average balance for the previous year, or the average monthly balance. So per month, like this month I had this balance, this month I had this average balance, this month, okay? And many banks cannot supply these certificates, right? I'm going to show you why the authorities, they want to see this, because in Spain it's quite common. And this is my own bank. I use BBVA, the second biggest bank after Santander, or maybe the biggest. And this is a screenshot of one certificate that I obtained from my mobile phone, okay? This is not a printed page. I didn't go to the office. And you can see there is a wet ink stamp, like back in the day, right? Because the banks know that the authorities want to see a stamp, okay? And this is very common in Spain, really, even if all this is digital. So they want to see the same thing from your bank, I don't know, Chase in the States, right? Or Santander UK, etc. They want to see those certificates. But many of you won't be able to provide those certificates. That doesn't mean that you won't be able to apply for the NLV. I have a video with Ainhoa Manero from Stern Abogados, where she analyzes and talks about each of these requirements and how she is making it possible for her customers to obtain the NLV, or at least that this is not a friction in the process, okay? But basically she says that if you have, if you do all that it is in your hands to provide this information, okay, and you notarize and make it look legal, you make it look official, yes, even if, you prove that your bank is saying that they cannot provide the certificate, but you are providing an Excel sheet where you show the balances and you notarize it and you sign it, okay, and you provide it, they should not deny you on that ground, okay? Of course, having legal help will help you fight if there is any problem with that, but you shouldn't, right? Because, of course, the consulates in the US, for example, nobody will be able to provide the certificates, so they have to be somewhat flexible. Just because the authorities in Spain require this, doesn't mean that in the USA this is applicable, okay, or in the UK, for example, right, or anywhere except Spain. Now, moving forward, can I work remotely for non-Spanish companies? And I underline non-Spanish companies on a remote basis, okay, and even like flying outside and working, okay? The truth is that this is a gray area, a legal gray area, because of two reasons. First one, the non-lucrative visa was created back in the day when there was no remote work. Second, there is a Supreme Court ruling stating that one person can work remotely for non-Spanish companies under the non-lucrative residency. But it is not in the law and it is not in the regulation. And in fact, the consulates are very strict about you mentioning even the possibility, suggesting it. But if they have the slightest doubt that you are working, they will deny you ipso facto, okay? But the truth is that many people obtain their non-lucrative visa with their savings, with their passive income, and then maybe they get a remote job, okay? And they started paying taxes in Spain because they are become tax resident. They have to pay taxes on their global income. They have their private health insurance, and they renew their visas without their active income, okay? Perfectly. Nobody had any problem ever. I know many people. There are many people in this situation, okay? So this is the situation today. I'm not telling you, yeah, you can work, okay? It's a gray area, okay? Better to consult with a lawyer if you are in this situation, potentially are in this situation, and you have to be very careful how you word your situation if you are in this situation, okay, in the consulate, okay, because it could be a straight denial, right? So watch the video where I asked this to Ainhoa Manero, and hear it directly from a lawyer. Now, if you're working remotely, now there is a new visa called the digital nomad visa. That could be better than the non-lucrative visa, but it's a totally different visa. But there are some advantages to it. You can apply from Spain. You can get an initial approval for 3 years with certain conditions, etc. So maybe engaging with an immigration lawyer could be helpful for you to determine what the best visa is. But the truth is that not only remote workers have gotten the non-lucrative visa. And specifically in the Spainguru community, there was one family who got approved with the husband working for an oil platform in the Northern Sea next to Scotland. So the Edinburgh Consulate, they included in their official description or requirements that, people can still work if their work is of a particular nature, okay, but they can still work. So this man goes every 15 days, flies to Scotland, works a few days in the oil rig, and comes back, and they're non-lucrative visa holders. And this is official information for Edinburgh alone, okay? This is not for anywhere else, right? But you can see that every consulate is different. And also have asked immigration lawyers, and they say that, for example, they have approvals for pilots, right? People who go to the States every month and they work a week and then they come back and they're on a lucrative visa. So if you're in this situation, go with legal help from professionals who are experienced in this. You can find them on spanguru.es, right? So the honest truth is that it is a gray area, yes, and certain situations are accepted by consulates and you can get your non-lucrative visa working, okay? So it's not a strict no, you cannot work in any situation, right? Because what the law says is that you cannot work in Spain. So they're thinking about like working for Spanish companies, really. So that is the situation about working, okay? Of course, this is not legal advice. I'm not an immigration lawyer, okay? I'm just telling you the things how they've been explained to me. Now, let's talk about the private health insurance requirements. And as you probably heard, first of all, if you're a UK retiree, you can use the S1 form to access the public healthcare system, and you can avoid using private health insurance, which is recommended to have one. Now, in order to be compliant, the private health insurance coverage, it must have some conditions. First, no co-payments, okay? No deductibles. Some consulates mention no reimbursements, okay, as well, Houston. And other consulates outside of the US. No waiting periods, so you have to be fully covered from the beginning, and full coverage for any type of medicine. And I put here an asterisk. Why? Because there's nuances, especially for people with pre-existing conditions, which are so common, especially for retirees of a certain age. Yes, it's normal to have some pre-existing conditions if you are 60, 70 years old, right? How do these people get approved for the non-lucrative visa? I will tell you. Normally, 99% of cases, you will have to pay a full year in advance, okay? And a certificate of coverage in Spanish must be issued by the company. It has to be in Spanish with the right wording, okay? And that is a requirement that you submit it. And sometimes some consulates also want the payment, okay, bill for the application of non-lucrative visa. Let's go through the frequently asked questions. Are my medicines covered? It's typical in the US that your medicines are subsidized, let's say, by your health insurance. In Spain, no. Okay, you have to pay full retail price. The good news is those prices are much lower than in the US, okay, or in the UK. What should the health insurance start date be? Many answers to this question. The most common answer is you started the first day of the month of your intended day of moving to Spain. If you intend to move to Spain on September 15th, starting on September 1st. Okay, that should be the general answer. Are there health insurance for older than 75 years of age? Yes, I heard the DKV has one until 99 years old, and Adeslas has until 84 years old. What if I have pre-existing condition? Circling back to the full coverage condition. It will depend how serious those pre-existing conditions are and the nature of those pre-existing conditions. For example, if you had cancer diagnosed in the past 5 years, okay, 3 years ago, unfortunately, it's going to be extremely hard to get private coverage. Okay, you will have to wait. probably. Okay. If you have something less serious, for example, like high blood pressure, stuff like that, what is going to happen is that the private health insurance will issue a compliant health insurance policy with an exclusion for those conditions, but still they will issue the certificate of coverage in Spanish that will make it valid for the non-lucrative visa, even if certain conditions are excluded. Now, if those existing conditions, you have problems in Spain, health problems, you have to pay your treatment out of your pocket, okay? But still, you would have gotten your non-lucrative visa. And after 1 year, going for the next frequently asked question, you could potentially pay into the Spanish public healthcare system using something called the Convenio Especial. You pay 60 euros per month if you are younger than 65, 157 euros if you're older than 65. And then you will get access to a public healthcare system that covers every pre-existing conditions treatment, not the subsidy of the medicines, okay? You will still have to pay retail price for those, but they're much cheaper, okay, than in your origin countries normally. Can I use my current health insurance from the UK, USA? Short answer is, if it's NLV compliant, yes. Long answer is, I highly not recommend it because there's so many blocks on the way. For example, the certificate of coverage is not going to be in Spanish. You will have to translate it. It's going to be very expensive. The wording is not going to be the right wording, okay? It could be considered to be a travel health insurance by the officers reviewing your case. You could normally they have co-payment clauses. Those are absolutely forbidden, okay? So if the word co-payment appears somewhere, denial, normally, okay? If some people were approved, it can happen, okay? It could happen that some people were approved, but I'm telling you, it is a rocky way. Better use one of those Spanish health insurance companies. They're very good ones. They can issue compliant health insurance and everything will be fine, and the prices are very, very competitive. So that's my long answer. Can I apply with the UK S1 form if I am a UK retiree? Yes. Do I need a Spanish bank account to hire any of these private health insurances? No. But if you already have one, potentially I've heard people who were able to pay on a monthly basis instead of the full year in advance, okay? But in general, all the companies will require the first full year in advance, okay, in order to issue the certificate of coverage in Spanish. But definitely something you can ask. Can I pay on a monthly basis? Just answer that. Can there be reimbursements? As I said, this is a great area, okay? It's a tricky area. I highly recommend you not having reimbursements, okay? Because there's been denials because of this, okay? It could be a potential reason for denials, okay? But apparently it's a hit or miss thing, that specific part. Will I get a refund if I am denied? It depends what you're hiring, okay? People ask this in the Facebook group, but what you really have to do is to read the contract, okay, and go to the cancellation clause or refund clause and read what that clause says. Some clauses are very favorable, no question asked, full refund. For example, my recommended health insurance partner is full refund, no question asked. The next day or in 48 hours, you get the refund if your visa is denied. It doesn't matter why. But some clauses, yes, some clauses are only if you get denied because of the health insurance. Only if you get denied because of that. Or maybe we just refund you everything except the taxes, except the contract fee, blah, blah, blah. So you don't get a full refund, right? So read what you're signing. Very important. What are the top companies? By far, the biggest one is Adeslas. And then you have many other good ones, okay? Asisa de KV, ASA, Salud, Caser, Sanitas, AXA, Mafia, okay? Honestly speaking, they're more or less the same. Yes, because doctors are moving from one company to another. Like this year, this specific doctor works with Adeslas. The next year, they finish their agreement and starts working for another hospital, for another company. You see, there is a lot of mobility, let's say, right? But these are all old companies who have been operating in Spain for many, many years. I have used 3 of them, and my experience has been the same, let's say. It's the same, right? So yeah, Adesla has more than a quarter of the market, and then Sanitas, Asisa, KV, Mafre, AXA, etc., right? So yeah. Okay, this is a special case for Washington, D.C., and I heard also Manila in Philippines, that people get a pop-up in the BLS website where they tell them, hey, you need to hire a travel health insurance, for applying for the non-lucrative visa. This is absolutely fake. It's wrong. It's bad. It's misleading. Don't do it. Okay. Even from those consulates, I had taken some screenshots. No travel health insurance with medical assistance coverage will be accepted. Travel insurance will not be accepted. Okay. Even at those consulates, it says. But apparently, BLS website has a glitch, or they want to sell you something. But don't do it. Only get compliant non-lucrative visa health insurance. Okay. So yeah. For this, I highly recommend you at least engaging. Just fill the form and ask for a non-binding quote. There's no question asked from my partner, Mr. Carlos Blanco, with stellar reviews. Why am I partnering with him? First of all, he's an expert immigration lawyer, so he knows the ins and outs of this visa and any other immigration procedure. So he understands perfectly the process and the timings and can advise you on that. Plus, he can provide you compliant ADESLA's health insurance policies with a great advantage, which is start date extensions, because many companies, you have to hire them very close from your appointment, okay? And they don't give you so much time, because you can only start it maximum 1 month in advance. So you potentially will be paying a couple of months of unused health insurance, which is sad, okay? So Carlos can extend in the future, okay? Or if you have change of plans, right? Or you need to extend 3-4 months, whatever, he can change that. So you're not paying for something that you are not using, okay? And potentially there's a risk that if you start using it too early, the consulate can say like, oh, you're not covered for the full year, right? Because you have a few months that you already used and the visa is not granted yet. So yes, all these tricky things are important, and that's why I decided to partner with Carlos, because he can solve that, bring you solutions, okay? And you can see, there is the pinned post on the non-lucrative visa Facebook group of a great experience there, and many people stating the same. So you're in very, very good hands. Here are some opinions, okay? So, it takes absolutely nothing. It is free to ask for a non-binding quote from him, because not only he can give you all these advantages, but also he's very, very competitive. So he has it all. I can say it very safely. So, and I have been recommending him for more than 3 years. Now, let's go to the medical certificate. It is absolutely different from the health insurance, okay? It's health, okay, but it has nothing to do. It is a one-page document that has to be signed by a doctor. And depending on the country, it has to have certain requirements, right? For example, if you're using a UK doctor, so applying from the UK, using a UK doctor, this doctor has to be FCDO registered at the Foreign Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because this certificate needs to be apostilled. And if it's only in English, it has to be sworn translated to Spanish, right? So if you can use a template that comes in English and Spanish, and both parts are signed, you will save from a sworn translation, okay? But in the UK, it needs to be apostilled, which is not the case in the US, okay? Or in the Australia, what I heard, or in Canada, right? It doesn't need to be apostilled. It needs to be printed officially, okay? Some consulate says using the letterhead of the doctor's office, has to come with a stamp, with a signature, and it has to be the doctor. It cannot be the front desk person. It has to be the doctor with some sort of registration where the officer can see, oh, this is a real doctor, okay? But always sworn translated if the template that you are using only comes in English, okay? Or if it's only signed the English parts, because some doctors will say, I'm not going to sign a Spanish thing, okay? And if you're not signing the Spanish thing, the officer can say, he didn't want to sign this, okay? And you could be requested to provide a one medical certificate, and you're only going to be given 10 days to do so, right? You have also the opportunity, and I put you in contact with a Spanish doctor, okay? First of all, in the UK, you can use ZoomDoc. I give you a £10 discount, if I'm not wrong, if I use ZoomDoc. It's a fully online platform for UK FCDO registered. doctors, but also I put you in contact with a Spanish doctor who can also provide online certificates. Okay, so he does a call with you, asks you stuff, and provides a certificate, which has a few advantages. First of all, you don't have to apostille it. Second of all, you don't have to sworn translate it because it comes in Spanish already. But some consulates have made a stricter interpretation of the rules and have asked the applicants to be physically in Spain when the certificate from a Spanish doctor has been issued, right? These are a few consulates, and the doctor know which consulate. So if you are interested in using the Spanish doctor for any reason, you will fill in the form which consulate you're applying from, and the doctor will tell you, yes, my certificates are being accepted without any problems. Okay, for example, Miami, London, Edinburgh, Singapore, I think Toronto as well was no problem. Like, there's many consulates that you can use a Spanish doctor certificate, okay, without this rule. Frequently asked question: my doctor won't sign the MC template. What can I do? Change doctor. Second, my doctor is not FCDO registered in the UK. Is his certificate valid? No, because you need to apostille it. How do I know the Spanish doctor certificate is accepted at my consulate? Ask, fill the form. You go to Spanguru.es, you go to health, and you go to medical certificates. You fill the form. I put you in contact with the doctor. The doctor will tell you, absolutely, you can move forward because my certificate is valid at your consulate, right? And this is a table that summarizes what I just said. There are, of course, outliers, exceptions, some crazy stuff. Okay, for example, in Chicago, this person applied for a non-lucrative visa and got required to apostille the medical certificate. So this person rushed to a notary, notarized the medical certificate, sent it to apostille, and submit it back again. It was completely exceptional, very strange, but I put it to your attention. And also there were some people asking in Miami, like, my medical certificate needed to be apostille, etc. It is not a requirement in the official pages of Miami BLS or the consulate. But it could be that the US is shifting towards the need of apostilling the medical certificates, although right now it is not something official, okay, as far as I know, but this could change anytime as we speak. So far, only the UK needs apostille, as far as I know. Now, let's talk about the clean criminal background check, the document that usually takes the longest to obtain, unless you got married in an island like Cyprus or Trinidad and Tobago or in South Africa. Sometimes those marriage certificates take longer than the police checks, okay? But it's also important to start with the longer documents, the ones that take weeks, okay? So first, we're going to look at the procedure from a timeline perspective, but basically the background check usually is the one that you have to start with. It must be squeaky clean during the last 5 years. In the UK, it's called the ACRO. Always you need to apostille and sworn translated to Spanish, usually with a 6 months validity, but you have to check with your consulate. Could be 3 months. The FBI background check requires a federal apostille and again a sworn translation to Spanish, and will have between 3 and 6 month validity depending on the consulate. Okay. So to be on the safe side, official documents consider that they are 3 months valid. Okay, safe side. Some of them could be 6. Okay, normally that's the rule. Am I still eligible with records on my background check? It depends what kind of records. If there's serious records with conviction time, blood, violence, stuff like that, usually it's a straight denial, even if they happened many years ago, right? If they happened many years ago and you have a process in your country to expunge or delete those records, maybe it's wise to do that in advance before applying for the Spanish non-lucrative visa. Okay. Am I still eligible with a no live trace? Yes, but the consulates will normally want an extra report from the ACRO office that explains what type of record you have underlying that no live trace. And I expedite the background check federal apostille, not officially, but Spainguru has partnered with private apostille services that you can find on Spanguru.es that can get you the apostille in as fast as 10 days. Can I notarize the background check and use a state apostille instead? No, don't do it. Straight denial. Where can I have my fingerprints taken? for the US, okay? So if you're applying from the US for the FBI background check, you go to the official website, you request a form, and you fill it up, and they will give you a code, and you can use that code to go to a US post office, and they will scan your fingerprints, but you can also use private channelers. You have a list of approved FBI channelers where you can also put your fingerprints there, okay? What is my, and you can also use, and do it the old way, which is using ink and put your fingerprints on a form, and send that on an envelope and send it to the FBI. That can also be done, but it will take much longer, because normally the FBI, if you do it with fingerprintings, it takes only a few hours to obtain the official copy that you can already use to strong translate, and you print it out and you send it for apostille. What if my fingerprints are illegible? You can send me an email to hello@spanguru.es, and I can send you also information from people who had that problem. Okay, potential solutions, right? And if you want to know more about the FBI background check process and everything, I have articles on Spanguru.es. Send me an email. I can send you the links so you can see the how-to guides on how to request it. Now, people who have commented in the UK, how long it's taking. Basically, the ACRO takes about 5 to 6 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and this hasn't changed since April. Sometimes people have paid for a premium service, and some people said that they received it very quickly. Some people said that even if they paid the premium service, they didn't receive it quickly. So yeah, in Canada, it's very, very fast lately, and also the apostille service is working very well, which is great news. And in the US, getting the police check, the FBI, as I said, the FBI background check, you get it quickly, okay, digitally. You print it out and you send it to apostille, but it can take 5 to 7 weeks if you do it via the State Department, okay. But it's only $20 to get the apostille, or you can use my private recommended apostille service, and it can take only 10 days, right? So it depends how much time you have, so and how much you wanna spend. Now, proof of not working, also $1 million question. There's huge variations among consulates, huge variations depending on your situation. But the truth is that this visa is also known as the retirement visa, because many people choose to retire in Spain using the non-lucrative visa. So the most common type of applicant is a retiree who, showing proof of receipt of a pension, everything is fine. It's very straightforward application, right? But if you're still working, usually, at least in the UK, the consulates will ask for a P45 form. In the US, a resignation letter, termination letter from employer, both translated and notarized. And if you're freelancers, they want some other stuff. Like in the US, notarized affidavit promising not to work. And in the UK, a letter from HMRC, an accountant stating having ceased trading, and that you are deregistered for self-employment. $1 million question. Should I quit before I get the visa? Is renting out a property considered a job? So for the first question, I will tell you in the next slide. Is renting out a property considered a job? It depends. Size matters. If you have 1 or 2 properties and you're renting long-term, no, it's passive income. But if you have 30 properties in Airbnb, that is considered a business. If you are somewhere in the middle, make sure to hire a property manager, just to make sure that you are not part of the operations. You are just receiving the passive income. And that's it, because you can still have businesses under a non-lucrative visa, as long as you are not actively working in those businesses, right? Is investing in stocks considered active income? No. Can I volunteer while on an NLV? Yes, you can do it, as long as you don't get paid. Now, some screenshots to explain the variations of the situation of working until the very last moment before getting the visa, right? So one says, for the UK consulates, a P45 is one way, but so is a letter from your employer stating that you have resigned and will leave on a certain date. It's not exactly like that, okay? You could be lucky, you could not be as lucky. It looks like it's a bit of a potluck if they accept a letter from HR department in place of a P45 if working to the last minute. And you can see constantly people in the Spainguru community asking, like, oh, I'm applying for Manchester, but I want to keep on working until I get the visa. Is this something that people has done? What type of documentation? You can see there a screenshot, but no conclusive answers. What I think is happening is that if you're in this situation and you apply for the visa and everything is fine, they will not grant you the visa as long as you provide P45. They will give you 10 days to provide it, okay? And if you provide it, you will get your visa granted. This is, I see this constantly, okay? In the UK. In the US, they tend to be a bit more flexible, but there has been some cases that they were not, okay? So for example, in Los Angeles, they're quite flexible about the situation, okay? And in DC consulate, as long as you are, let's say, organized about the dates and everything, they're also okay with this. But Houston, for example, is a bit problematic. You can see the screenshot here. But basically, Houston BLS rejected an application because retirement was still in the future, even if the future resignation date was prior to the visa start request. So this person said, look, I'm going to quit, on August 29 and start the visa on September 1st. Okay, all good? No, they didn't want to take the documentation. And that was in June, I think. Then in DC, this was young people, a couple, I think. So DC consulate required resignation proof dated before the visa start, which is the same what the other applicant in Houston wanted to do. And it was okay, right? Just as statements of no work in Spain as well. All right. And then also Airbnb booking. We mentioned that DC was one of those strict consulates that wanted a rental contract. Okay. But yeah, the working situation is very, very complex at the very least. For example, this case, Venezuelan national applying for NLV at Buenos Aires consulate in 2023, December 2023, got denied because, quote, showed activity in LinkedIn profile. What kind of activity, I don't know, but this person appealed, went to Madrid courts, and the Madrid court said that the consulate was right. Yes, because this person was showing activity in LinkedIn, right? So they do Google you. They do Google you sometimes, so be careful. And you could be denied. You could be denied. Also, people who say, coming back to the work thing, some people say like, I want to take a sabbatical year, and then I want to go back to work after the sabbatical year in Spain. I've seen those letter of intent and people asking why they were denied. Yes, because of course they just want to be honest. They say, I want to just be without working 1 year in Spain. I have $1 million in the bank. I want to do it. But they said, after that, I want to go back to work. The consulates don't like that, even if you have the right of doing so. You will be denied if you just say that, okay? Just, it's a bit frustrating to see those denials, because they shouldn't be denials. They shouldn't be, but the consulates, they just sometimes interpret that. And that's why it's important to have legal advice, okay? If that is your situation, if you're not straightforward case, it's always good to go with legal advice, with a visa agency, with an immigration lawyer, etc., right? Now, marriage, birth certificates, non-married couples. Married couples need a valid and updated certificate, as we said. It has to be a new one. You cannot use your marriage from 1976 certificate. You need to get a new one, okay? And usually validity will be for 6 months, but it could also be 3 months. So be careful with that. Children, the same, will need birth certificates to prove that they're your children. And also non-married couples can apply, but they need to prove their relationship. Now, via a legal partnership document, okay? You're making a strong case. Or as stable partners, where you show at least 1 year of cohabitation, or if you have children in common, it doesn't have to be 1 full year, right? Now, all these certificates, they need to be apostilled in the country that issued them, okay, and sworn translated to Spanish, right? What about adult children and ascendants? So children over 18 years old and no longer accepted as dependents, okay? And also ascendants, parents, are no longer accepted as of the new regulation effective on May 20th, 2025. Digital Nomad Visa accepts adult children until 26 years old, and then with certain conditions after that, and also ascendants. So yeah, definitely something to look at. And this is the Article 61 of the regulation that mentions what I just said. What are sworn translators? We mention that all the time. Very important. Sworn translators are accredited by the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. No one else can accredit sworn translators. They pass a difficult exam to become certified, and each one of them has a unique registration number. Their translations are accepted by all Spanish institutions, including consulates. And all these translations are done remotely and signed with a legally valid e-signature. So no physical mail is needed. You don't need to send documents via post office, right? You just scan everything, you send it by email, you ask for the price, for the delivery date, and you get your sworn translation. You print it out, and that's what you submit. Now, can I use any translator from the American Translator Association? And I mention this because Miami and Los Angeles mention this association, but it has nothing to do with a sworn translator, except for the fact that they are all translators. But in order to be an American Translator Association member, you don't have to be appointed by the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You can just be an American translator who specializes in translating Chinese to English and being part of the ATA. But that is not recognized by the Spanish consulates. Therefore, it is misleading. Only use Spanish sworn translators appointed by the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. That, of course, you can find on Spanguru.es. I have 4 recommendations, very competitive prices, very used to the usual documentations to apply for the non-lucrative visa. So excellent reviews, excellent. So definitely use a Spanish sworn translator, okay? Can sworn translator work with several language pairs? No, they only work with one language pair, okay? So for example, in Spainguru, I have 2 sworn translators who only do English, Spanish, Spanish, English. But I also recommend you an agency who does any language pair. Okay, so for example, you got married in France and your birth and your marriage certificate is in French. You can also get in touch with sworn translators who do French to Spanish, right? Or German to Spanish, etc., etc. Okay, you my recommendations. How much do sworn translations cost? Between 36 to 45 euros, depending on the complexity of the document, okay, and the language pair. More or less, that will be the price. What comes first, the apostille, then the sworn translation? $1 million question. Most of the people will not sworn translate the apostille, okay, just to save some money. But there are some times where not sworn translating the apostille could be a risk because of the officer reviewing the documentation says, oh, this apostille needs to be sworn translated. It happens, okay? It's not that common, but it happens. Many lawyers will recommend you to obtain the original document, obtain the apostille, and then send both the certificate and the apostille to sworn translate, both of them, even if the apostille is also in Spanish. Because the content in Spanish of the apostille is limited. It doesn't show everything that is in the original document, okay? So this is what many lawyers do because they also work with in-house sworn translators who don't charge more money and they sworn translate everything, right? So this is the answer. But many people just, for the FBI background check, they get the digital version, they send it to a sworn translator, they print out the digital version, send it to apostille while they get the sworn translation, and then they get the apostille back, and then they submit that without having sworn translated the apostille. This is a reality, and usually it is accepted, but it could be that day the official reviewing your case dropped the coffee to the floor and wanted the sworn translation of the apostille itself too. Now, about also the bank statements. Many people ask about this because they have dozens of pages of bank statements. I asked this, how did you provide this? There is no science in this, but just to give you an example, because many people also applied before May 20th that answer this. But basically, nearly 80% of people didn't sworn translate the bank statements in English. Chase in the States has the option to print officially in Spanish. Okay, so you can use that if you have Chase, common bank in the States. Translated only summary pages, nearly 20% of people. And then a few translated everything. My banks provided statements in Spanish. This is the case of Chase, etc. So this is a situation with bank statements, right? Oh yeah, friendly reminder, watch the YouTube videos on Spainguru YouTube channel. Almost 1,000 videos published. Nearly half of them are about the Spanish non-lucrative visa. I publish 1 video per day, so definitely interesting to follow because, as you can see, this is changing and evolving all the time. And if you have joined later on, remember there is a Q&A session at the end of this presentation where I will answer all the questions. You can write your questions anytime in the chat box in the bottom right corner of your screen. But if you have to leave earlier and you think that this information is valuable, that you have learned something today, please leave a review on Trustpilot. There's a green bar on the top with a red button. You can click it and go to Trustpilot and leave a nice review. And I will be crossing my fingers for your NLV application, and that will bring you luck in order to obtain it. That's for sure. And I will really, really be grateful. Now let's go to during the application. Application process. All family members must apply. Consider an in-person application and or pick up with all applicants. So some BLS offices give you the option to pay and you get your passport by mail back with a visa, but sometimes you need to pick up in person, depending on the office. Some consulates will only work by mail. This is the case of Panama. It used to be the case of San Francisco before and Houston, but now has changed. And some consulates will also use a combination of working by mail or give you the option to also show up and do an appointment, right? So some consulates in Australia are also changing to having an appointment. This is the case of Melbourne now. The NLV will grant you a 90-day window to arrive in Spain. This is changing as we speak, because as you can see in the screenshot there, on the right, it says duration of stay is 365 days, right? So unfortunately, that doesn't mean that you can arrive to Spain anytime during that year of validity. And I have asked Ainhoa Manero from Sterna Abogados, what's her take on this, right? Because of the new validity periods that used to be 90 days, and now they are giving you 1 year of validity period of your visa. But the fact is, and this also was expressed by a community member in the Non-Lucrative visa group, is that many people arrive to Spain, but it takes weeks or even months to get their residency card. Their visa is expired, and then they are left in no man's land without a visa that is valid and without a residency card. So the authorities wanted to give you the possibility to be able to travel with a multi-entry. You can see there the word multi on the right. Give you the possibility to use your passport and get out of Spain, come in, etc., while your residency card is being processed. But when can you enter Spain? Until you obtain an official clarification, should stay on the safe side. You should enter Spain within 90 days of your visa start date, even if it was granted for 365 days. Okay. You want to watch more and listen this from a lawyer, please watch that video. Okay. And all this new year, 1 year validity period. Common mistakes to avoid in the application process: not checking specific consulate requirements, watching YouTube videos from non-lawyers, reading Facebook posts. Okay, always check the official requirements in English, in Spanish, BLS official requirements, and complete with first-hand experiences from people who applied at that specific consulate, because they could be hidden requirements as well. Okay, like tax forms, etc., that are not on the website. Or for example, Manchester, they will ask you for certificates from the banks that are not on the website either, right? So it's important to have all this perspective and continuously reviewing, because there are updates all the time. Showing wrong documents or expired documents, wrong chronology, for example, starting applying for easy stuff and leaving the difficult stuff at the end. Wrong health insurance with co-payments, for example, or starting it too early or too late. Say that you plan to work, or not enough proof that you will not work, or that you haven't been enough convincing that you are not going to be working. The younger you are, the more you need to convince that you're not going to be working. So be careful with that. I have a certain interviews on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, from people who faced extra scrutiny because of being too young to apply. So yeah. And the timing for the process. Normally, you would start 6 months before your intended date to arrive to Spain, for US and Canada, or in the UK even later, 4 to 5 months in advance. Remember that most consulates will retain your passports during the processing of this visa, and the processing can take weeks. So if you plan to travel, maybe you won't have that passport. Now, in the case of US applicants, it's easy to get a second passport while your visa is being processed. But in the UK, it's not easy. to get a second passport. But certain consulates in the UK, like Manchester, will give you, there is a form and you can fill it up and you can make your case why you need your passport, why you need to travel, and maybe they give you the option to keep your passport while your visa is being processed. How long does the process take? Documents preparation, it would take 2 to 3 months. Attending the appointment on the 3rd month. These are all ballpark figures. Wait for the approval. It could be 1 week, it could be 7 weeks, it could be 13 weeks. Supposedly, it should not be more than 3 months, okay, 90 days or 12 weeks. And now with the new regulations, this went down to 1 month, but nobody will be doing it, in my opinion. Then it could be that you are missing some document and they ask you for more documents, so they will give you only 10 days to provide that documentation. And normally you could also choose your visa start date. And once you enter Spain, you would have officially 30 days to obtain your residency card. Now, as I mentioned before, you can ask your visa to start up to 3 months in advance. However, the difficulty I found was finding a health insurance company who would do that far out, as most only do 2, and many of them do only 1. Tip, use Spainguru's recommended exclusive agent who can start your health insurance in the future. Now, let's go to the process itself. Let's say that you submit your paperwork on date A, and each of those segments are 1 month, okay? Imagine that you submit your application and you choose to start your visa 3 months later, 90 days later. The consulate grants you your visa before that and says, okay, let's start your visa when you ask to start it. And you fly to Spain before the 90 days that you submit your paperwork on letter B. Sorry, you get your visa granted to start on letter B, okay, on the date B, at the end of the 3rd month. Imagine this. Once you get your visa, maybe it's valid for a year, but it's recommended to enter during the next 90 days. So you have that segment in red to enter Spain. And you decide to enter Spain at the beginning of the 3rd month, okay, of those 90 days. Then once you enter Spain, during your visa validity period, you only have 30 days officially to get your TA card, which no one can because there's no appointments. We're going to talk about that. And then once you enter Spain, you get your residency card. Usually your residency card should start when you have entered Spain during the visa validity period, right? 1 year after, the TA card will expire. You can start your renewal of your residency 60 days before the renewal, the expiration date, and up to 90 days after the expiration date, which is not recommended to do. It's recommended to do your renewal 60 days before the expiration date. Okay, don't let it to the last moment, because if you're denied or there's any problem, you will have less days left, and you could end up having to leave Spain without the possibility of a new renewal. Okay, so always good to start early. Another way to see the process, and again, this is for illustrative purposes only, especially, for example, for trying to get appointments at the consulate. Maybe you want to start even earlier. But yeah, first, you find your consulate. Second, you check the official requirements. Third, start with the hardcore documents like FBI background check, right, or police record. If you're moving with your partner, marriage certificate or legal partnership, or kids, your birth certificates, all that. You will have to apostille and sworn translate all that. You will obtain your medical certificate, usually valid for 3 months. If you're in the UK, you need to apostille it too. If it's only in English, you need to sworn translate it. Then you will sort out your private health insurance or S1 form if UK retiree. Then you will book an appointment, okay? But maybe you should start even earlier to try to get the appointment date. Then you will attend the appointment. You will submit your documentations, and then you will wait for notification. It can take several weeks. You will collect your visa. You will fly to Spain during visa validity period, not before, hopefully. There's many reasons why to enter during the visa validity period and not earlier as a tourist. You will obtain an empadronamiento, and then you will apply for the residency card. Another way to see it is a Gantt chart. Yes, you can see there in the blue the validity periods. All the official documents need to be valid at the time of submission or appointment, which is the red dotted line, right? So in February, you get your police check. You will apostille and translate. In April, you will get your financial documents, bank statements, etc., medical certificate. You will start to try to get an appointment 2 months earlier, and then you will translate everything, and you will apostille everything. You will go to your appointment. Hopefully, you got an appointment. You go to the appointment. You will allow a processing period, and then you will have to fly to Spain during the visa validity period within 90 days. Right? That's another way to see it. Application process update. Applications must now be submitted no later than 2 months before your planned arrival in Spain. So you need to allow 2 months processing period, unless exceptional reasons justify a shorter time frame. You can submit your application as early as 6 months and up to 2 months prior to your intended date, right? This is the new regulation. I don't know how real this is. And again, there is a decision deadline now in which, like, if after 1 month you didn't get a consulate communication, that is called an administrative silence, and it's a negative silence, which legally is considered that. Just a quick moment. Over 60% of you watching right now aren't subscribed. That's a lot of people getting value without hitting that button. If my videos have helped you understand Spain's immigration process, visas, or life here, even just once, please subscribe now. I'm working hard to reach 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2025, and your click truly makes a difference. Thanks so much. Now, let's keep going. You have been denied, yes? It doesn't have to be that you were denied, but let's say from a legal perspective, you could appeal or request a formal answer after 1 month of silence, yes? So maybe I didn't say it the right way. It doesn't mean that you were denied. But if after 1 month of no answer from the consulate, you could consider it as such and therefore initiate a process of trying to obtain an answer. This, I hope that I explained myself correctly, okay? Default rejection, if no decision within that month. Yes, so it doesn't mean that you have been rejected, okay? But you could ask for an answer, let's say legally, from a legal perspective, right? Maybe I should change the wording of that slide just to don't scare anyone, because there's so many people that didn't get an answer after 1 month. So many people, okay? But the authorities want to, make it more agile, more fast, etc. But the truth is that the consulates are full of paperwork, are full of job workload, and they cannot answer as quickly, okay? For example, Manchester now, people are taking more than 12 weeks to get an answer, just to give you an example. And it doesn't mean that they're denied, okay? Most of them are approved, right? And this is the regulation. If you want to read it, it's Article 63 of the regulation. And now we're going to talk back of taxes, because there's a way to avoid capital gains tax, especially for people who want to sell their homes. There are deductions, there are conditions to not pay capital gains tax, allowances. For example, if you're older than 65 years old and you sell your primary property and you buy a property in Spain with the proceeds, etc. But the best way you can avoid capital gains tax is just not to become a tax resident in Spain the same tax year in which you sell your home, right? And for that, there's 2 conditions, right? To time you're moving to Spain correctly. As I said before, tax year go from January 1st to December 31st. So if you sell your home in 2025 and you move to Spain in 2026, you're not a tax resident in 2025. Therefore, tax authorities won't charge you capital gains tax on that home sale in the UK or in the US or in Australia, right? Because you're not tax resident during the same year, right? Second option is you sell in 2025 and you move after July 2nd, 2025, without having been a single minute physically in Spain during 2025, and you only spend 182 days during that tax year. Because remember, in December 31st, the tax year ends, and then in January 1st, a new tax year starts, right? So that's the other option. If you want to know more about taxes, join my webinar, read my articles, watch my videos, etc., etc. Now, let's go with after the approval. Living in Spain on a lucrative visa. How you can arrive to Spain. two options: from outside of Schengen or from inside Schengen. From outside of Schengen, there's going to be immigration control. Now it's a passport stamp by Spanish authorities. Soon there's going to be an entry system that is digital. It will scan your face and your fingerprints. That will count as a Spanish stamp. But if you enter via another Schengen country, you won't get the Spanish stamp. If you fly from New York to Frankfurt, and you will get the German stamp, and then you fly from Frankfurt to Spain, nobody will be there to stamp you your passport. Therefore, when you go to your residency card application or appointment with the police will not know when you enter Spain. And that is a problem. That could be a big problem, actually. Therefore, if you are in this case, you enter via another Schengen country, get something called the Declaración de Entrada, okay? The Declaración de Entrada is one-page document that the national police station will stamp and sign when you enter Spain. If you enter via road, you go to the nearest police station to the border because they know what you're talking about. If you continue driving and you go in the middle of Spain to a police station and ask for a Declaración de Entrada, they will think that you are talking in Chinese, okay? So go to the close station next to the border. Or if you arrive via airport, go to the police station in the airport, okay? Because they will know what you're talking about. And the best you can do is to print it before, fill it up, just to make it easy. You go with the form already filled, and you say, like, I need your signature saying that I enter Spain on this date, right? Because then you can go to your TA appointment and show, like, look, the police says that I entered this day, okay? So it's an official document, right? Some people say that, oh, this is not necessary. I show my boarding passes, gas station tickets, etc., and so some were okay. But some people got told that they had to leave Schengen and go back in and get a stamp. Okay, so you don't want to be in that case, and it only takes one signature just to be on the safe side. It's always good to enter within the 90-day visa validity window and not enter as a tourist before. Okay, long story, but better to enter during the visa validity window. All the lawyers recommend this. I have articles about this with the possible outcomes of entering as a tourist before. Try not to do it. If you want to enter as a tourist before, send me an email and I will send you the links to the articles. Once you enter, try to get a Spanish SIM card. It's important because when you initiate procedures with the authorities, it will send you SMS to your Spanish number. Open a non-resident bank account. Go to any brick and mortar bank and open a non-resident bank account. You can't open a resident bank account until you have the TA card, as far as I understand. But you will need to pay your rent, to pay your utilities, etc. And obtain an empadronamiento. We mentioned it. It's the registration of your rental contract at the city hall of the city where you live. And in 90% of cases, police station will require this document that has a 3-month validity in order to obtain your residency card. And then you will officially have 30 days to obtain your residency card. Is the padrón strictly necessary to obtain the TA? There are no appointments to obtain the TA. What should I do? This is something that many people say, especially in Valencia lately, but also in Madrid now. My husband and I have been living in Valencia for 4 months and we couldn't get an appointment. Do you know what's going to happen? What's going on? So these people have been 4 months without getting a TA. This is very, very common. Now, a lawyer that has posted on Spainguru's group, and I'm quoting him, he says this, lawyer from Valencia, specialized in this area. In practice, getting the TA appointment is not required within 1 month. Almost nobody gets it, okay? They can even take up to 6 months without any issue. The sooner, the better that you get the appointment, okay? But there's no immediate rush, so don't get crazy if you don't get it, right? And now you have a visa validity of 1 year, so you can use your passport just to get in and out from the country. The empadronamiento is also nuanced, right? 90% of police stations will require an empadronamiento, okay? Usually the big police stations, they will not require you, one, because they are more informed about the law, because the regulation doesn't say that you need an empadronamiento for the residency card. What you need is a proof of address. And many times with the rental contract is enough, with the Airbnb receipts is enough, okay? Many times. But in most cases, you end up going to a small police station because there are no appointments in the big police station of the city. And in those small police stations, they want an empadronamiento. Okay, so in 90% of places, they require an empadronamiento. But this lawyer says that in Valencia and Alcira, all Valencian areas, they won't require an empadronamiento. So depending where you go, they will require it or not. Best is to have it, of course. Renewal process, how and when you renew your non-lucrative visa. As I said, after 1 year T expiration date, you can start 60 days before the T expiration date to renew. Usually you would do it online. Actually, in many provinces, only you can do it online. The case of Malaga, for example, right now, as far as I understand. Okay, and for that, you need to get a digital certificate. Digital certificate, you install it in your computer and you can do procedures, official procedures from your computer. You need to apply for it. You go to a place, like tax office. You show your face, you show your ID, they give you a code, and then you download it in your computer, and now you can do procedures in your computer. And that's what you will use to do your renewal. If you apply as a couple, both the adults will need a certificate in their computer. Now, the financial requirements, as we say, is double the amount with nuances, okay? And again, it can be savings, passive income, combination of both. Renewals are for after 1 year, for 2 years, and 2 more years up to 5. Although it could be an extraordinary renewal of 7 years, okay? And after 5 years, you could apply for the long-term residence as long as you are eligible. Renewal periods are for 2 years each. And now, after May 20th, they included in the regulation, lower hierarchy, not the main law, a minimum stay of 183 days per immigration year. So it's a natural year, not the tax year, okay? In order to renew the visa, any temporary visa, including non-lucrative visa, right? Now, this 183-day minimum stay requirement currently only included in a bylaw, not the main law, and there is a Supreme Court ruling indicating that it must be in the main law to be enforceable, not in the regulation. So presently, many non-lucrative visa holders are still renewing without meeting a minimum stay requirement. This is what Ainhoa Manero from Stern Abogado is saying. So actually, the $1 million question, do I have to become a Spanish tax resident under a non-lucrative visa? The answer is no, at least during the first year or two. It is very easy to not become a Spanish tax resident, even if you're a holder of this visa, because the minimum stay requirement is not enforceable, and it also doesn't overlap with the tax resident. But you need to go with legal advice, in my opinion, if you're going to be in this situation, okay? I have videos about this with interviewing Ainhoa, so I recommend you to watch this if you're in this situation. Now, let's talk about a case study of a renewal process. Imagine there's a couple is 36,000 euros as per the IPREM 2025, okay, minimum threshold. Imagine that the main applicant is receiving a 30,000 euros pension annually. But since the renewal is for 2 years, the pension income requirement will be actually 30,000 the first year. This person will be paid 30,000 the first year and 30,000 the second year. Therefore, this person has 60,000 in 2 years, right? So recurrent income, passive income counts as double, let's say. You could see it this way, right? So they only need to show 12,000 euros. Could be savings, rental income, dividends, whatever. Credit card, credit, okay? Readily available, no penalties. What about rental income? As I said before, not considered to be a safe income by many regions, so be careful with that. And you will also have to fulfill other requirements like having ongoing private medical insurance coverage or access to public healthcare system. And be careful to renew the first time thinking that you were going to use the Convenio Especial with access to the public healthcare system, because normally the renewal will come earlier. And if you have a gap in your coverage, you will be denied. So be careful with that. Only use the Convenio Especial to renew years 4 and 5 and onwards, okay? To be safe. Updated passport copies are for both individuals, and as we said, no gaps in health coverage, and no police records. A lot of people driving under the influence once under the NLV and being denied because of that. So this will be police records from Spain that they will check if you have had any records during your year or years in Spain, right? And you will have to show an empadronamiento for the renewal, which is mostly a requirement. Although a community member renewed in Granada and said that it wasn't a requirement. So it really depends. There's some variations in the regions, right? Now, if you plan to obtain the long-term residence or even the citizenship, there are minimum stay requirements for any of these procedures. First, NLV renewal. There's a minimum stay of 183 days as per the new reglamento, but it is controversial and not enforceable according to expert lawyers. So take it with a pinch of salt because of the legal ambiguity of the Supreme Court ruling that there is there. If you want to apply for the long-term residence after 5 years of legal residence in Spain, remember you can't be outside of Spain more than 10 months in the previous 5 years in order to obtain it. Those 10 months don't need to be consecutive, but they cannot be more than 6 months all in one block. Potentially, if you don't comply with this, you could potentially, depending on where you live, apply for a third renewal of the non-lucrative residency, although not every region allows it. For example, Galicia doesn't, and I don't know who does or who doesn't. I think Madrid allows it. But it's an extraordinary renewal. That's how they call it. And then if you plan to apply for citizenship, if you're a holder of a temporary residency, you should not be outside of Spain more than 90 days per year in the previous years before applying for citizenship. Or if you're a holder of a long-term residence, you should not be outside of the European Union more than 1 year consecutively, or no more than 30 months in 5 years, right? And we're going to talk a little bit more about the citizenship pathways as well for special cases. But common pathways to work permits after 1 year of residency in Spain, you could potentially apply for work permit for cuenta propia. This is your own business or becoming a freelancer, contractor, okay, where you present a business project, and if you're approved, you could potentially obtain a residence via work permit, working for yourself, or cuenta ajena. This is obtaining a job offer by a company who is ready to sponsor you, or even transitioning from non-lucrative residency to digital nomad visa, which is controversial because you need to prove that you have been working remotely under a non-lucrative residency, which supposedly is not permitted. This gray area, but people have done that as well. Underlying more the gray area of working remotely under a non-lucrative residency. Now, if you plan to transition to a work permit, do it with care, because the best way to do it, just to be on the safe side, is you obtain your Spanish visa, you renew it for 2 more years, and after you have the renewal and you have the certainty that you have permit to stay in Spain for 2 years, you apply for the modification. And if your modification is denied for any reason, at least you have the legal residency for the next 2 years. And you can reapply maybe again for a modification. But don't apply for the modification counting on an approval without having the renewal. Talking about pathways to Spanish citizenship, if you're a holder of any of those countries in red, holder of a passport for Latin American countries, Philippines, Andorra, Portugal, Guinea Equatorial, Brazil, it only takes 2 years of residency in Spain in order to be eligible to apply for a Spanish passport. Remember, you cannot be outside of Spain more than 90 days per year in those 2 years. But otherwise, normally, citizenship by residency, you can only become eligible after 10 years of legal residence. This is for nationals of the US, UK, and all those countries in gray. Okay, of course, you can obtain citizenship via different pathways. I'm talking only by residency, right? A non-lucrative residency, of course, counts towards those times. Now we're wrapping up. Remember, Spanguru for free, absolutely for free. Spainguru.es. You can use everything in Spanguru, inside Spanguru, for absolutely free. I don't charge for anything. Only, of course, if you go to my vetted partners, they will charge you for that service, and I will receive a little kickback, right? This is how I pay my invoices, logically. So, but still, you can have so many free resources. Weekly newsletter every Monday, YouTube channel with almost 1,000 videos, half of them non-lucrative visa, blog posts, almost 2,000 articles, a huge community with an aggregated total of 150,000 members. We're the non-lucrative visa group. It's one of the largest with 23,000 members as of today. Super active group. You can watch my 6 webinars for free, receive the recordings, use the Move to Spain checklist just to have a clear timeline of how to move to Spain with everything related in every single step. And as I said, my vetted partners I have recommended, most of them I have recommended for several years with great results, great reviews as well, and many of them I have personally used them, right? So so yeah, definitely you are in good hands if you need to, and at least this is my recommendation. At least engage with a consultation with immigration and tax advisors before moving to Spain. That's it. That's the only thing that you I ask you to do, just to be on the safe side, because there's so many consequences of moving to Spain from the immigration perspective and tax perspective, that it is important, in my opinion, to have expert advice on that, at least information, just to make sure that you are on the right, in the safe side. Okay. Excuse me. There's a bonus slide. I asked people, 128 votes. Have you applied or planning to apply for an NLV? And did you use legal help versus not? 50% said use legal help. 50% says do it yourself. And for the ones who use legal help, do you think it was worth the investment? About 80% said yes. 20% said no. Round numbers. And this is not using Spanguru's partners, okay? This is in general, okay? People can use any visa processor out there or any other lawyer, but in general, people are happy that they used legal help, okay? But it is a visa that can also be applied perfectly alone, okay? Do it yourself. Not the case of digital nomad visa, like where 95% of people need to use a lawyer because it's a total minefield, okay? Now, if you want to stay in touch, always send me an email to hello@spanguru.es. I always answer my emails. You can join the Facebook group, watch the YouTube channel, join the newsletter, and remember that the content of this webinar is for information purposes only and is not legal advice. The requirements listed here are not official. Please check your specific consulate requirements. And now we're going to go through the Q&A session where I'm going to answer the questions. And if you have to leave earlier, please leave a review on Trustpilot. There's a green bar on the top with a red button that will redirect you to Trustpilot. And now let's go to the questions. So, thank you for joining, Jeff. Today, we're Filipino that stays in United Arab Emirates. From where can we apply NLV? In the Philippines or in UAE? If you're a legal resident in the UAE, you can apply from Dubai Consulate or Abu Dhabi Consulate. I don't remember where the consulate is, but there is a consulate in UAE, right? You have to be a legal resident, though. So yeah, that would be your consulate. Or potentially you could fly to Philippines, and there is one in Manila and one in Cebu City, I think. So yeah, those two options. Remember that UAE is not a Hague Convention country. Therefore, the police check cannot be apostilled in UAE, but you can legalize it in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in United Arab Emirates, and that will work. Okay, I will release a video soon. I have an article about this, but you can always send me an email to hello@spanguru.es because it's very specific. But yeah, people have commented on that, and in the group, in the Non-Lucrative Visa group, many people, I mean, not as many as US, UK nationals, but I have seen more and more people applying for the NLV from Dubai. So yeah, and from different nationalities, because Dubai is very, very international. Kieran, thank you for joining today. Can I be a non-paid director of a company but still get an LLB? As far as I understand, you director, non-paid director. Non-paid. I mean, the spirit of this visa is that you cannot work, right? If the officer reviewing your case says like, oh, you're not being paid, but you're a director, you may be working even if you're not being paid. Okay, could be contradictory, because I said like before, if you could be on an NGO in Spain without being paid and everything, but this is a tricky question. Non-paid director of a company. If you can prove that you're only getting dividends, that you are not actively part of the operations of the company, yes, but if you're in this situation, consult with a lawyer, experienced lawyer that knows about this, who has worked with people in the same case than you. And I'm telling you already that depending on the consulate and the officer reviewing your case, it could be one outcome on another. But I'm sure that working with legal help will set the base, maybe in the letter of intent, where you explain or how you frame it or how you present the information so that it is absolutely clear that you're not performing any work there, right? This was me asking this question. Well, I don't have any more questions actually. Oh, I see some more questions, but they didn't put the question mark. So, from Pakistan, can you sell me all documents on black and white? What do you mean by that? Can you send me all documents on black and white? I don't know. I record this video and I upload it to YouTube. So the presentation is not something that I sent, but you can watch it on YouTube and take your screenshots and everything, okay? There is a copyright in all my website and all the content that I produce, okay? But I gladly share all this information for free. And hopefully you will find it useful, and hopefully you will engage with one of my partners at some point. But if not, it's also perfectly fine. But yeah, this is the way that I do it. Clement, let's post this. Thank you for joining today. Are the bank statements from the US needed to be apostilled? So, normally not. Normally not. First of all, a bank statement per se cannot be apostilled, okay? Per se. What you can do is you bring the bank statements to a notary public, the notary public will sign it, and then the signature of the notary public can be apostilled, okay? But as far as I understand, in the US or anywhere else, the bank statements are not apostilled, and it's not a requirement, okay? So depending on where you're applying from in the US, check the official requirements. We could go right now and see it. If you tell me which consulate is your consulate, that where you're applying. So yeah. Next question. Please add a question mark at the end of the question so I can publish it. Unfortunately, the software is a bit. If there's no question mark at the end, yeah, it has to be in the same sentence. But yeah, just so that everyone reads your question, so it makes it easier. But do they need to be translated in Spanish? Miami. So in the presentation, I went through this, and I'm telling you that there is no clear answer to this question. This is a specific slide. Should I sworn translate all the bank statements? 77% of people said didn't. They just provided the sworn translation in English. This is in general, not only Miami, okay? A sizable amount of people said, 17% translated only the summary pages. 3% only translated everything. Some people said, my bank provided statements in English. Chase in the States, I know, has this option, okay? And yeah, this is more or less the situation. So yeah. Let's publish the next one. Thank you for joining Bisazu. We're applying to apply, mom and kids only. And my husband will stay in the UAE to work. They need his salary certificate as he will be our financial sponsor. Well, you need to prove that he can provide enough funding for you. So if you're one main applicant, so yeah, I've seen this case, and I've seen people who were approved with the salary of the husband who stayed abroad. This is something that happens. Exactly what you need to provide in order for that to be official, I don't know exactly what documentation exactly, but you just take all the documentation that you have, make it look as official as possible, and you prove that he will be able to maintain you over the thresholds, and that's it. I've seen it before happening. But if you're in this situation, which is not absolutely straightforward, again, go with legal help. That's my recommendation. You can find recommended lawyers on Spanguru. Yes, you don't need to hire them for the full process, but just consult for 40 minutes, and you just go with your questions. And in 40 minutes, you can get very clear answers for all this. I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to evade my responsibility for the Q&A session here, but that's what I would do, because I don't know exactly. You're in UAE, your husband is working there. It's not a straightforward situation. Therefore, if I was you, I would really consult with an expert in this visa. Are there any more questions there? It's 1:51 here in Malaga, southern Spain. Thank you very much. Great webinar. Congratulations. Congratulations to you for joining today and for asking a question. And remember, if you want to help me a little bit and help others find this content, please leave a review on Trustpilot there on the top. You have the red button there. You can leave a review there. If you have used any of the services or any of the other resources on Spanguru.es, you can also mention that if you want. But yeah, basically, just for the last minute that I will show you screen sharing. I will show you how you can use Spainguru for your move to Spain. Yes, and here you can see it. Okay, everything is for free, except this part of services where if you engage with immigration lawyers or sworn translators or apostille services, yes, or health insurance, medical certificates, tax advice, right? Except for this part that of course you will have to pay for those consultations or for those services because they are professional services. All the rest is for absolutely free. Yes, for example, Move to Spain, you have all the webinars here, 6 webinars that you can join today. So taxes webinars is relevant to you. Move to Spain is relevant to you, even if you're applying for the non-lucrative visa, right? And there is the Non-Lucrative visa Q&A session. But basically, I don't do any presentation. I just go there and try to help people answering their questions, right? So then there is the newsletter, that I send every Monday. And if you don't want to receive it anymore, you just push unsubscribe and you don't receive the newsletter. The Move to Spain checklist is a fantastic tool, in my opinion. Not that I did it, but I think it's great, because it really helps you understand the timeline of moving to Spain in general, regardless of the visa type. But for example, it starts like 12 to 6 months before, and it moves forward and after you arrive, and the resources. So if you go to, the first stage, 6 to 6 months before, comes with videos for each of the steps, the different visa options, the most common ones, the different tools that I give you. Yes, and all the information, the Facebook groups, where should I live in Spain? And that moves us to the recently released section, which is called Spain Destinations. Spain Destinations here, what factors to consider if you don't know exactly where to move. I created these guides for each of the most common places. It's 13 guides. For example, Madrid, Barcelona, Valencia, Malaga, Seville, Granada, Jerez, ordered by area in Spain. But let's look at Malaga, the city where I live. And it tells you, like, you have here the pros and cons and comparisons, the weather. Yes, push here and it brings you to the weather based on data, that is continuously updated. You want to know about the cost of life, redirects you to numbeo.com. That tells you exactly how much is a meal at a McDonald's. Okay, it's €8. I can tell you, it's true. It's €8. Kilo of apples, 2.27. True. Yes, basically, like everything you need to have an initial information about the different locations sends you to Idealista. So you can see the rentals, okay, in the area of Malaga, right? And you can compare and see how much it would be, start building your budget, right? So yeah, and then the latest articles here, for example, Spanish non-lucrative visa versus digital nomad visa. I recently released this comparison between these visas. Yes, so many things that you can use Spanguru for. So yeah, it is right there for you to use. So I really appreciate that you made the time to join today. I'm gonna be leaving then. Wish you good luck. Stay in touch. Send me an email if you wish. And if not, I see you around. I see you around in the group. Take care. Have a wonderful week. Goodbye.